This video is brought to you by channel partner 4 years running, Squarespace. Stick around to learn more about them, as well as a special offer they're making available through my channel. Gamers, what is happening? Do you all see that Pedro Pascal SNL performance? Did you see the HBO Mario show they pitched? My god, I wish I could show it to you in full here, but Lorne would absolutely yeet my channel from existence if I ever dared use one of his skits in my videos. Suffice it to say, we need grim, dark, sad dad Mario, and I hope Nintendo has more than just their lawyers watching this one. By the way, congrats to Assassin's Creed for winning a Grammy. That's big. Which Assassin's Creed game was it, by the way?
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Valhalla, you know the one. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, absolute classic. Congrats on the win. Looking forward to the sequel. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Difficult to credit just how much news has gone down in a single week. For real, as I went down the run sheet looking at all the stories, I grimaced, fearful of the editing job that poor Austin had ahead of him. I mean, this week alone, we had like 70 live service games die, Halo got rebooted, E3 got effectively cancelled, the day before released a gameplay video that basically had no gameplay in it, and most disappointing of all, we learned that there was a Titanfall game in development, but it is no more. That is just a smattering of the news we've got to get through today. So what are we waiting for? Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Here comes the news. Our top story is one that is sure to bring a tear to your eye, so I hope you've got your Kleenex ready. Respawn was making a single-player Titanfall game, but then they cancelled it. Yes, it hurts. It hurts so bad. Why you do this, Andy Wilson? To be fair, we don't actually know it was his fault, but it's always a pretty safe bet to blame Andy Wilson, so let's just go with that. All right, let's take a step back and unpack this news. Earlier this week, Jason Schreier of Bloomberg filed a report saying that 3 sources familiar with the matter confirmed that Respawn were working on a single-player game codenamed Titanfall Legends. It was set in the Apex Legends universe, which is also the Titanfall universe, and it only gets referred to that way now because Apex Legends generates billions of dollars every year, and all Titanfall generates is Reddit threads full of people asking for Titanfall 3. Schreier confirmed that there were 50 people working on the title, and with its cancellation, those people will either be reassigned or laid off, hopefully the former. Schreier didn't provide any further details on the title, but luckily Jeff Grubb of Giant Bomb stepped up to the plate, and this is where things get particularly painful. The game was to be single player, and it would see the return of BT7274, your very good boy Titan from the campaign of Titanfall 2. The game would have essentially been based on bringing him back online and upgrading him. It would have featured a number of Apex Legends characters for the whole crossover appeal thing. It would have seen the return of wall running, because of course it would have, and it was meant to be inspired in no small part by Doom Eternal. God damn it, why did we have to find out that this ever existed? Ignorance was bliss. Now we have to walk around knowing that we could have had a Titanfall 3. What does this mean for the future of Titanfall? I mean, nothing good. Given the description and the fact that there were actual people working on it, this felt like the one shot that Titanfall had at another entry. With the project scrapped and the people moved on, you really get the feeling that Titanfall is properly done. Truly one of the biggest wastes of potential in the rich library of dormant video game IP. News of this cancellation coincided with more big news from EA and Respawn. Specifically, Apex Legends Mobile was shutting down. EA announced a pivot in their mobile strategy during a recent earnings call, saying that the popular and successful mobile port would be taken offline in May. The reasons EA gave were vague, but Andy Wilson did speak of the desire for players to play games like this in a seamless, cross-progression enabled environment where your progress in the mobile port was totally connected to the main game. That is not how the Apex Legends port currently works. This coincided with EA's announcement that the Battlefield mobile port would also be scrapped after having been in development for over 3 years and having been soft launched in a few regions. The internal studio leading the creation of that game has been shuttered. It is unclear if those people will be reassigned or let go. Again, hopefully the former. These mobile cancellations come during what was a sort of reckoning week for live service video games. Just recently, Crystal Dynamics announced the end of service for Marvel's Avengers, and just days later we'd get word that Battle Royale wrestling game Rumbleverse was being taken offline less than 8 months after its launch. This one was published by Epic and was exclusive to their storefront, and rather than try to launch it on Steam to capture a bigger player base, the game is just being deleted, and that really blows. The hits keep on coming though, because just a few days after that, it was revealed that dodgeball brawler Knockout City would also be taken offline. This one was originally published by EA, who put a lot of marketing pump behind it, but when it didn't gain traction, the developer secured the publishing rights and went on alone. Sadly, it hasn't worked out for them, and servers will come down soon much to the disappointment of a number of people because apparently this was a really fantastic game. But wait, there's more. Echo VR was a popular competitive riff on that Frisbee game they play in Tron. It was apparently doing really well in terms of engagement and player counts, but not well enough it seems, because it too got shit-canned this week and will soon be unplayable. It prompted a response from veteran developer and VR evangelist John Carmack, who wrote about the need for all games to be built to withstand decommissioning, since so many live service games are being taken offline with no means of having the experience live on. A very relevant point in the context of this next live service cancellation, CrossFireX. This is a very popular team shooter in Korea that was recently brought to the West, accompanied by a single-player campaign developed in partnership with Remedy. Apparently the campaign was terrible, and if you want to experience it for yourself, then you better get in quick because both the multiplayer and single-player modes will be unplayable when the game is taken offline in May. Think about that, a single-player campaign yeeted from existence because the multiplayer live service wasn't generating enough engagement or dollars. That example really focuses the mind when we consider Arcane's upcoming Redfall. Recently it was revealed by way of an FAQ that Redfall will be an always online experience even when playing single player. The game does not have an offline mode, which means that one day, unless the game is patched to support it, Redfall's service will be turned off and the game will no longer be playable at all, single player or multiplayer. Imagine if we couldn't play Arx Fatalis or Dishonored or Prey in the years to come because they were not designed to be played in perpetuity. That is the grim future that awaits us if this trend of always online live service experiences becomes more pervasive than it already is. And as sad as I am for these developers whose projects have collapsed this week, I do hope that this live service apocalypse serves as a bit of a wake-up call for the industry, guiding publishers and developers back towards offline experiences that will remain playable come what may. Alright, so changing tack now, let's check back in on Halo-ish. Alright, so you might recall that Microsoft recently slashed a bunch of jobs, and in so doing, they let go a number of people from Halo steward 343 Industries. This came after a long-term hiring freeze and a number of contractors being let go as well, which in aggregate has resulted in a significant reduction in overall headcount. Jason Schreier has had a big week because in addition to breaking that news about Titanfall 3, he also broke the news that Microsoft are essentially hitting the reset button on the Halo franchise. There were rumors that we might see single-player, story-focused DLC for Halo Infinite, but Schreier says that that was never on the table, nor will it be, meaning that if Chief's story is to continue, it won't be in Infinite. Most importantly, Schreier has confirmed that the rumored jump to Unreal Engine is true, and that future Halo experiences will be delivered in Epic's ubiquitous engine. That is a huge deal. You know how Halo feels and how it always feels the same? That's because it's always been built in the same engine, which just got modified and updated over time. Well, that changes now, as 343 have greenlit the move to Unreal for future projects, which means they have the difficult job of trying to recreate Halo's unique feel in a totally different engine. In terms of new projects, the first cab off the rank is Project Tatanka, which is a joint venture with Texas-based Certain Affinity. Everyone is 99% certain that this is a battle royale type experience, though Schreier does suggest here that, quote, it may evolve in different directions, end quote. For now, the only thing that Microsoft are publicly committing to is that the live service support for Halo Infinite will continue, and that will be managed by 343. Outside of that, it's a genuine mystery where things go from here, but you have to assume that the 10-year plan they had for Infinite has gone exactly the same way that Anthem's 10-year plan went. Word of advice? Don't make 10-year plans for video games, it rarely ends well. Speaking of first-party Xbox developers hitting the reset button, the Coalition, makers of Gears of War, appear to be doing the same thing. This news also comes from Jeff Grubb, and he reports that he has sources who've confirmed that the Coalition had 2 smaller projects in the works, and that both of them have been scrapped. This is related to the Microsoft layoff, since the Coalition did lose a few people in that, and apparently those people were attached to these smaller unannounced projects. With those cancelled, the studio is now fully focused on Gears of War 6, which Grubb says will definitely be their next title. Gotta feel a little bad for the Coalition in all this. When a studio is forced to work on the same game over and over again, they do start to yearn for a bit of creative flex, and it no doubt stings to know that they won't get that opportunity. Still, Gears is a franchise that is, ironically enough, in better shape than Halo at this point, so you can understand Microsoft wanting to keep that train on the tracks. If we do hear about this next Gears game anytime soon, it's probably going to be at E3 2023, but also not at E3 since technically Microsoft aren't going. Okay, so let me explain. We all know that the shambling corpse of E3 has been necromancied back into existence by the ESA, and even though they've enlisted the support of PAX organizer ReedPop, people are still skeptical that E3 will ever again regain its luster since, well, the ESA really screwed the pooch big time on this one. There were dates announced and the LA Convention Center was booked as the venue, but at this point no exhibitors have been publicly announced, particularly Sony, Nintendo or Microsoft, and an E3 without them isn't much of an E3. Well, it turns out E3 2023 isn't going to be much of an E3, as this week IGN broke the news that Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft are all skipping E3. Sony's absence is unsurprising since they've stepped back from E3 some time ago, choosing to instead rely on their states of play. Xbox's absence is a sort of technical one, since they'll be set up literally across the street in the Microsoft Theater, and they'll be doing their usual E3 thing, just not under the E3 banner. Nintendo's absence is the shocker, since historically they have always had an E3 presence, typically with a giant booth full of hands-on experiences. The thing is, in June, Nintendo will have just shipped Zelda Tears of the Kingdom a month prior, and with no other major releases anytime soon, and no new hardware to show off, a giant booth presence doesn't make much sense. So yeah, sad as it is, you can totally understand Nintendo dipping on this one. When the news broke, the ESA issued a statement refusing to confirm the report, but saying, quote, "It is important to note that even as the show evolves and adapts, it will not impact the core of ESA's work for its member companies. Our priority remains advocating for your policy interests on the state and federal level," end quote. Just to be clear, one of their biggest advocacy pushes is lobbying hard in defense of loot boxes and other predatory forms of in-game spending. So you can guess why absolutely no one but the Seuss has any love for the ESA. Just as all this was going on, Jeff Keighley did another one of his cheeky, well-timed tweets from the Summer Games Fest account, reminding people that his show was still going on, and he'll host a showcase on the Thursday ahead of the planned weekend press conferences. So yeah, E3 is going ahead this year, but it's going to be pretty tame, and you have to wonder if the turnout will be so bad that it might spell permanent curtains for E3. We will see. Turning now to some Sony news, there's been some reporting on the level of interest in the PSVR 2, and Sony is none too happy, issuing a rare response. It started with a report from Takashi Mochizuki of Bloomberg, who claimed to have a source saying that Sony has slashed PSVR 2 output following lower than expected pre-orders. Bloomberg claimed that Sony had halved its planned shipments for the PSVR 2 from 2 million units down to 1 million, a very, very big downsizing for one of their biggest 2023 releases. Bloomberg says that a panel manufacturer was told to brace for reduced order volume and that Sony now plan to sell 1.5 million units in the first year. Well, Sony was having none of this, responding to GamesIndustry.biz by saying that they have not cut PSVR 2 production numbers. The wording on that is interesting though, since Sony did not respond to the claims of reduced pre-order interest or a reduction in forecast sales. So it's possible that Sony planned to continue producing as planned and then sit on their inventory a while longer. It's also possible that the PSVR 2 sells out the arse and will be out of stock for months, but I doubt that. I really feel as though Sony just haven't done much to market this new, very expensive device. I mean, Horizon Call of the Mountain, for example, that is the flagship launch title for the PSVR 2, and what is it? I don't know. We've seen a few tiny trailers and no gameplay deep dive. Then there's the library of launch titles, which includes a hell of a lot of ports of VR games available elsewhere. I'm excited for the PSVR 2. I do think it has a lot to offer and will be a great shot in the arm for the ailing VR scene. But have I seen enough to make me want to slap down $600 US plus the cost of the games? Nah man, not by a long shot. Hey, why don't we check in with everyone's favorite game. The day before Call of Duty Division Resident Evil SnowRunner War Z Edition. This week, after massive backlash owing to Fantastic straight up lying about why the game was delisted on Steam, and then lying about why the game was delayed by 9 months, Fantastic thought they'd put everyone's mind at ease by releasing some gameplay. And you can't see the air quotes I'm doing right now, but believe me, they are happening and they are emphatic. Roll the clip, Austin. This was the gameplay. It was 10 minutes in total, and approximately 9 minutes and 30 seconds of it was just walking around this empty-ass city. I felt like Ian Malcolm the first time he takes the tour of Jurassic Park. Like, you do plan on having some gameplay in your gameplay video, right? It was just so barren and boring and so horrendously downgraded versus the reveal trailers, and all the gameplay elements were so underbaked. And this is a game that was meant to release in a month's time, by the way. Utterly ridiculous. It got better though, because after the trailer went up, people started thinking that parts of it looked a little bit familiar. Twitter user Chroma brought it to everyone's attention, showcasing that key scenes were eerily similar to those seen in Call of Duty trailers, and yeah, they definitely look pretty similar. But even if that's just a coincidence, the uncanny similarity to other game trailers and key art goes back well before this most recent trailer. Here's a comparison shot with some key art from the game SnowRunner. Here's a scene that has a lot of Resident Evil energy. Here's the key art from The Division contrasted with the key art from the day before. I mean, come on now. Even if you've extended every bit of grace to this point, you gotta admit that this comparison is sus as fuck. Look, I'm gonna just say that if this gameplay is the best Fantastic could show off at this point, then things are just about as bad as I thought they were. I still do not believe this is a real game, and I do not believe this will ever release, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong, Fantastic. Prove me wrong. Here's a funny rumor. Apparently Amazon have bought the rights to Tomb Raider for $600 million. The only catch is, we don't know what currency that is. The rumor comes from website Fellowship of Fans, who had earlier predicted a bunch of stuff in relation to Amazon's Ring of Power TV show, so it's possible that they have a source with inside Amazon. The story is that Amazon purchased at least some of the IP rights, but it's unclear if that's a wholesale purchase, allowing them to make any form of media related to Tomb Raider. That 600 million figure is the funny part though, since it's highly unlikely that Tomb Raider is worth $600 million at this point. The theory is that it's 600 million krona, the Swedish currency of current rights holder Embracer Group. Converting that means Amazon would have paid around $55 million for the rights, which to be honest sounds kinda low, so I don't really know what to believe at this point. This is all happening at a time when Amazon have confirmed that they're going to be publishing another Tomb Raider game, again developed by Crystal Dynamics, and there's currently a Tomb Raider TV series in the works. So is this rumor true? I mean, it would make sense, but we won't know until Amazon formally announce. You might recall that the rights to Tomb Raider was sold off for a song by Square Enix recently, who jettisoned their Western operations and IP last year when they sold it all to Embracer Group for around $300 million. Well, Square certainly isn't on the other side of their financial struggles, as an earnings call this week revealed that Square's operating revenue was down 17% year on year. That data does not include the recent launch of Forspoken, which by all accounts has substantially underperformed if you go by Steam sales and publicly available sales data. Square has also had a significant contraction in its live service portfolio as well, with 3 live services canned in the past few months alone, as well as very little success on their mobile front. Don't worry though, Square Enix has a plan: NFTs. They remain a focus for Square Enix's medium-term investment pipeline, and I'm sure they'll fix absolutely everything. There was one piece of good news though for Square Enix. Final Fantasy VII Day is now an official day in the Japanese calendar. January 31st, 2023 was the 26-year anniversary of the release of Final Fantasy VII, and Square celebrated the occasion by registering the date with the Japanese Anniversary Association, which is apparently how you get stuff done over there. Sadly, the date is not a public holiday, but it is official in at least some capacity, and I don't know about you, but having Final Fantasy VII Day appear every year on the calendar would be more than enough reason for me to schedule an annual sickie. A quick lightning round to top us off. The PS5 is about to get some shiny new software upgrades. A beta build for the operating system adds the much requested support for Discord voice chat, variable refresh rate support for 1440p, and the ability to update your DualSense controller wirelessly. Oh my god, science said it couldn't be done, but here we are. Oh, and you'll also be able to ask your PS5 to capture clips using voice commands like, hey, PlayStation, capture that last 5 minutes. That sounds pretty cool, right? Not to be outdone, Xbox has clapped back with a price increase in Japan? Let's hope that beta isn't rolled out to the live environment globally. Back 4 Blood never really found its mojo, it seems, and this week the developer Turtle Rock have announced that the game will not be receiving new content, as the weight of the full studio will now swing behind a new game currently in development. Back 4 Blood will still be perfectly playable, just no new stuff, a disappointingly short timeline for what was billed as a Left 4 Dead spiritual successor, achieving just a fraction of the longevity of the classic co-op shooter that inspired it. And finally, Fat Shark, makers of the successful Vermintide series and the recently released Warhammer 40k Darktide, have issued an apology for the launch state of Darktide, admitting that they fell short of player expectations. The mea culpa also came with a delay of new seasonal content and a further delay of the Xbox port, which to this day still has not received a new release date after its indefinite delay last year. It's a shame because the core gameplay is totally rad. but the rest of the package is hella underbaked, and you get the sense that a fully functional and feature-complete version of Darktide is at least a good 12 months away. Sad times. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, if Fire Emblem is a little too colourful for your taste, then you might be interested in Redemption Reapers, which looks to emulate a lot of the tactical gameplay elements while turning the grimdark dial all the way to the right. This just got a release date February 22nd for PlayStation, PC, and Switch. Dredge is a title I profiled a while back in my Put This On Your Radar segment. It's a narrative-led mystery game that's ostensibly about fishing, but there's a lot going on under that waterline. Your life as a trawler sees you trawling not only the seas, but the secrets of the region you're living in, and having played the demo of this myself, I can tell you that there's a hell of a lot to discover. This one was one of the most wishlisted titles at the most recent Steam Next Fest. A lot of momentum behind it, it's looking great, and it just got a release date March 30th for all platforms. Capcom just announced a new Street Fighter game. Don't get too excited because it's a mobile game. Street Fighter Duel is the first ever Street Fighter RPG where you'll pitch classic and new fighters against each other in RPG-style combat that I'm going to guess is like all those other superhero battler games we've seen in the past. There's some card mechanics in there as well. Expect lots of in-game spending. Ubisoft announced a new crew game this week called the Crew MOTORFEST. It's giving off some serious Forza Horizon vibes. To be fair, Ubisoft's racing and sports categories have always had a cheery vibe. Hell, just look at Riders Republic. Still, the success of Forza Horizon has definitely reshaped the racing landscape a little, and it'll be interesting to see how this one actually plays when we see some gameplay details. No word on when that'll be yet, but it'll likely be in the next week or two. The final announcement is final indeed, because this week POWERWASH Simulator announced that they were doing a Final Fantasy VII crossover. People forget that POWERWASH Simulator is published by Square Enix for some reason. No one knows why, but it's one of the few games they've released recently that's just straight up good. And now they're doing cool crossover content where you get to POWERWASH 7th Heaven and a Guard Scorpion. Sign me the hell up. No date for this yet, but you got to assume it's coming soon. 3 delay announcements this week. The first is for horror game Amnesia: The Bunker. The dev team says they're a small team and they've been hit by a wave of illnesses within the team, and as a result, the game will now ship on May 16th. The Last of Us Part 1's PC port also got a bump this week. It was set to release pretty soon, but has now been moved back to March 28th, which is after the season finale of the TV show. Gotta guess that Sony would have liked to have had that one out there while the show was still dominating the discussion, so props to Sony for choosing to delay the title rather than just rush it out during a convenient marketing cycle. And finally, and this one hurts, Jedi Survivor has been pushed back from its planned March release to April 28th. The sequel to the excellent Jedi Fallen Order is looking superb, but Respawn says they need a little more time to bring it to the brilliant shine it deserves. This actually pushes the game outside of EA's yearly earnings window, so a delay is kind of a big deal, and not the sort of move I would have expected EA executives to make. So, good job, Andy Wilson? Ew. Gross. So what came out last week? Well, it was a bit on the quiet side, but there were a few smaller releases worth shouting out. The first is In that turn-based strategy game adopting the same art style as the recently released Pentiment. Reviews for this one are positive across the board. It's sitting at a perfectly respectable 81 on Steam, and the 3 reviews on OpenCritic are all recommending it too. Eurogamer gave it a positive review saying, quote, a rare balance of playfulness and genuine strategic depth, plucked from the margins of history, end quote. Deliver Us Mars is the follow-up to the much-loved Deliver Us the Moon, though the sequel hasn't seemed to capture the acclaim of its predecessor. It's sitting at a mostly positive 75% on Steam, and critics have it at a fair but nice 69 on OpenCritic. PlayStation Universe scored this one a 7 and said, quote, Deliver Us Mars, the latest Dietman Brothers project, channels the same heart that started beating in Deliver Us the Moon, even if it takes a great deal more effort to get to it. You need to slog through some cumbersome and at times downright frustrating gameplay, but I promise you, the premise and ending make it worth your while, end quote. Only other release for the week was that new SpongeBob game. This is not a remake or a remaster, it's a wholly new game that is heavily inspired by the classic 3D platformers of the before times. Critics and players seem to be very divided on this one. On Steam, the game currently sits at very positive 94%, a sterling result, but if you head over to the critics scene, they are less enthused, putting the title at a fair 70 on OpenCritic. IGN was brutal, scoring the game a 5 out of 10 and saying, quote, SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake is a bare-bones platformer that manages to be supremely boring despite its SpongeBob-infused charm, end quote. At the other end of the spectrum was PC Invasion, who scored it an 8, saying, quote, while fairly short and easy, SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake does a good job of bringing the cartoon world to life with good writing, fun platforming, and colorful varied levels, end quote. Most of the reviews point to the fact that your love of this will depend entirely on how much you love SpongeBob, so unless you're a die-hard fan, this is probably a safe skip. So what's coming out this week? Man, it is a slow week. February is very backloaded to the point where there are really only 2 releases to shout out this week, and one of them is a mobile port. Endling Extinction is Forever is a lovely narrative-led exploration game with a powerful message about the fragility of the natural environment. It tells the story of a mama fox trying to guide her cubs to safety, avoiding all manner of dangers along the way. Think Limbo, but brighter and with foxes. It got a wonderful reception and it hits mobile platforms today. Only other release is a big one, Hogwarts Legacy. Now, many people are wondering why I do not have a review up for this title. Honest truth, I wasn't sent a code. Warner Brothers said they would send me one. I cleared my schedule, it never arrived. I asked where it was, and Warner Brothers then changed their story saying that only media were getting code. But when the embargo hit, it turns out content creators did receive code. So whatever, I'm very used to being lied to by video game PR. It is surprisingly common, let me tell you, and that is why I do not have a Hogwarts review up. Take it up with Warner Brothers PR, not me. I tried my best. I no longer have time to review it as February is totally packed and I'm already reviewing other stuff. Pretty cool stuff actually, stuff I'm excited to talk about. Expect those reviews live next week. Alright, so we had our hearts broken this week with that Titanfall 3 cancellation, but if it's wall running you're after, then maybe put this on your radar. This is Sprawl, and it's clearly drawing inspiration from a number of places. You've got your wall running a la Titanfall, you've got your rocket jump from back in the old arena shooter days. Looks like you can slow down time, so there's a bit of Max Payne in there, and the visuals seem to be a nice midpoint between Quake and Doom. Most importantly, the action looks hella smooth and hella fun in all the right sorts of cathartic ways. This just looks like a straight up good time, and I've added it to my wish list. That is always a good thing to do since developers can take wish lists to the bank when it comes to stuff like publishing deals, media coverage, the works. If you want to help these guys out, I've left a link to Sprawl over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and we are at the start of a new month, which means it's time to get paid, though to be fair, this month is a little quieter than most. Epic right now is still giving away Crime City Builder City of Gangsters, as well as Arcane Classic Dishonored Death of the Outsider. On the 10th, both of those games will disappear, replaced by Recipe for Disaster, which is a restaurant management sim game. Think Gordon Ramsay, but with considerably less swearing. The PS Plus lineup for February was leaked last week, and now it's been confirmed. In the next day or two, Sony owners will get their hands on Evil Dead, Oli Oli World, Mafia Definitive Edition, and Destiny 2 Beyond Light. I gotta say, that is one of the best PS Plus lineups we've seen in a hot minute. Except for Destiny 2, of course, but all those other games are totally worth playing. Speaking of worth playing, it's time for Games with Gold. This month, Xbox the world over will be treated to over $40 and 2,000 gamerscore worth of value in the form of For the King, a tabletop-style RPG, as well as Guts and Jails, which sounds like some cool game about prison riots, until you realize that you misread it and it's actually a game about soccer. Oh well. The Twitch Prime lineup we spoke about last week is also live, but like I said, the only major shout out this month is Morrowind Game of the Year Edition. One more thing I'll flag is that Sony have announced that their PS Plus collection is disappearing in May. That isn't the monthly PS Plus offering, that will continue. The collection is a collection of PS4 games that you get when you buy a PS5. That collection will disappear. The good news is that the full catalog is still there now, and if you have a PS5, you can add them to your PSN library before they disappear, and then they will stay in your library forever. So don't forget to do that. I went through and added like 10 games to my PSN just by clicking a few buttons, which is a pretty good deal if you ask me. Our feel-good story for the week is a musical number, and it takes us back to one of gaming's most cheery, idyllic locations. The USG Ishimura. With the game now out and people digging deeper to uncover its secrets, Garbit managed to figure out an obscure code in one of the rooms. The results were surprising.
There once was a ship from the DECD Ishimura USG. She cracked on boom with gravity. Go me bully boys go. Huh. Soon may the Carrion come to save our souls and take us home. One day when the fiction is done, we'll take our leave and go.
Isn't that lovely? A bit of sea shanty in your dismemberment-based sci-fi horror game. Love it. And also, the lyrics are pretty good, actually. They're quite clever. You should listen to the whole thing. I'll leave a link to it below. Yet another way in which EA Motive really crushed this remake. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the show for the week. It was a big one, so thank you for sticking through it to the end. I always appreciate that. If you happen to have enjoyed yourself, learned something, spotted a game that you might be interested in, etc., then I would love it if you could drop the video a like. That is always super helpful. If you'd like to come back sometime, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and ding the notification bell. Right now, I am working on 2 very big reviews scheduled for next week, as well as some cheeky preview stuff, which I can't talk about yet, but I'm excited for it. February is a huge month, and there is a lot of content in the pipeline. I hope you'll join me for it. Thanks again for stopping by today. Have a great week, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Squarespace. One question I often get is how to break into the world of content creation. There's a lot of ways to do it: streaming, community building, YouTube, games media, many ways to cut your teeth. Obviously, my stuff eventually ends up on YouTube, but what if YouTube wasn't the right fit for you? What if you wanted to build your own independent gaming outlet or blog, allowing you to talk about games how you like, building a portfolio of work as you did so that you could one day leverage into different opportunities? Well, if you're just starting out, then could I suggest Squarespace? Squarespace lets you build professional-looking websites in minutes. You just select from their extensive list of pre-built templates, customize those templates to your desire, and boom, you are in business. It really is that easy. Squarespace's intuitive tools and huge library of templates make it super easy to get started. If you can handle formatting a Word document or a PowerPoint slide, then you are already well and truly equipped to make a fantastic looking website through Squarespace. Once it's live and your content starts going up, Squarespace has all sorts of back-end tools to help you track and grow your site. Detailed analytics tools showcase what your audience is clicking on, and SEO tools and social media integration make it easier for your audience to find you. It's a simple end-to-end solution that could be the start of your content creation journey if the written word is what interests you. If it is and you want to get started, then visit squarespace.com to start building your website through their free trial. And if you want to get serious, then use offer code SKILLUP for 10% off your purchase of a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.